All right. Because I know. All right. I just started talking without like just any subtle easing us in. Okay. Okay. So hi guys. Uh, hope you guys are doing well. This video is titled Kant versus Ibn Ghazali, which I think would be interesting to share because uh, I feel like not a lot of people engage with uh, it's just not common for me to engage with people that are doing comparisons of you say Muslim thinkers with more canon Western philosophical figures. So I thought this was a perfect opportune moment because and I remember in my previous video I talked about the book that changed my life. Well, here Iqbal talks about the subtle difference, and this is of course. Let me preface this. Uh, this of course is Iqbal's interpretation of Kant and his interpretation of Ibn Ghazali. But I thought it would be useful because Ibn Iqbal he poses the problem that Kant raises, and then he goes into where the Muslim thinkers decided to go. So I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs of Iqbal describing the situation of Ibn Ghazali and Kant, and so here let's go into it. Um, it says right here in the section that um, Iqbal describes as so. There's a section in the beginning. It's called knowledge and religious experience, um, and there's a couple of paragraphs where he talks about Kant and Ibn Ghazali, and so I'm going to read from that. And here it goes. So Iqbal says, it cannot, however, be denied that Ghazali's mission was almost apostolic. Apostolic, that's interesting. I haven't said that word in a while. Like that of Kant in Germany of the 18th century. In Germany, rationalism appeared as an ally of religion, but she soon realized that the dogmatic side of religion was incapable of demonstration. The only course open to her was to eliminate dogma from the sacred record. With the elimination of dogma came the utilitarian view of morality, and thus rationalism completed the reign of unbelief. Such was the state of theological thought in Germany when Kant appeared. His critique of pure reason revealed the limitations of human reason and reduced the whole work of the rationalists to a heap of ruins. And justly has he been described as God's greatest gift to his country. Ghazali's philosophical skepticism, which, however, went a little too far, virtually did the same kind of work in the world of Islam in breaking the back of that proud but shallow rationalism, which moved in the same direction as pre Kantian rationalism in Germany. So here, Iqbal is making the parallels between the situation that Kant was answering uh, at the time in Germany, and Iqbal is doing the same comparison with Ibn Ghazali, saying that even in the Arab world, there was similar things going on with this kind of rationalism, and Ibn Ghazali does the same thing in a very similar fashion to Kant. And so Iqbal continues. He says, there is, however, one important difference between Ghazali and Kant. Kant, consistently with his principles, could not affirm the possibility of a knowledge of God. Ghazali, finding no hope in analytic thought, moved to mystic experience, and there found an independent content for religion. In this way, he succeeded in securing for religion the right to exist independently of science and metaphysics. But the revelation of the total infinite in mystic experience convinced him of the finitude and inconclusiveness of thought and drove him to draw a line of cleavage between thought and intuition. He failed to see that thought and intuition are organically related and that thought must necessarily simulate finitude and inconclusiveness because of its alliance with serial time. The idea that thought is essentially finite and for this reason unable to capture the infinite is based on a mistaken notion of the movement of thought in knowledge. Um, actually, yeah, I'll continue reading this because it further clarifies. It is the inadequacy of the logical understanding which finds a multiplicity of mutually repellent individualities with no prospect of their ultimate reduction to a unity that makes us skeptical about the conclusiveness of thought. In fact, the logical understanding is incapable of seeing this multiplicity as a coherent universe. Its only method is generalization based on resemblances, but its generalizations are only fictitious unities, which do not affect the reality of concrete things. In its deeper movement, however, thought is capable of reaching an immanent infinite and whose self-unfolding movement, the various finite concepts, are merely moments. In its essential nature, then, thought is not static. It is dynamic and unfolds its internal infinitude in time, like the seed which, from the very beginning, carries within itself the organic unity of the tree as a present fact. Thought is, therefore, the whole in its dynamic self expression, appearing to the temporal vision as a series of definite specifications which cannot be understood except by a reciprocal reference. Their meaning lies not in their self identity, but in the larger whole of which they are the specific aspects. Um, and then Iqbal proceeds further. This larger whole is, to use a chronic metaphor, a kind of preserved tablet which holds up the entire undetermined possibilities of knowledge as a present reality, revealing itself in serial time as a succession of finite concepts, appearing to reach a unity which is already present in them. It is, in fact, the presence of the total infinite in the movement of knowledge that makes finite thinking possible. Both Kant and Ghazali failed to see that thought, in the very act of knowledge, passed beyond its own finitude. Um, the finitudes of nature are reciprocally exclusive. Not so the finitudes of thought, which is, in its essential nature, incapable of limitation and cannot remain imprisoned in the narrow circuit of its own individuality. In the wide world beyond itself, nothing is alien to it. It is in its progressive participation in the life of the apparently alien that thought demolishes the walls of its finitude and enjoys its potential infinitude. Its movement becomes possible only because of the implicit presence in its finite individuality of the infinite, which keeps alive within it the flame of aspiration and sustains it in its endless pursuit. It is a mistake to regard thought as inconclusive, for it too, in its own way, is a greeting of the finite with the infinite. Um, so it's almost as if I were to kind of go through this, the way Iqbal wants to explain this and how he critiques Kant and Ghazali is that, um, from what I understand, is the way Iqbal looks at the infinite and the finite is that the infinite, the finite is already contained within the the infinite, and that because of sequential time, the way we experience knowledge uh, would seem as such. But what he's saying, it would seem that knowledge is inconclusive, like thought would be inconclusive um, because of what Kant had said and so on. But what Ghazali is trying to say is that actually, if we look at if we if we take the position that we are already within the infinite and that our experience of finite anything is actually simply an unwrapping of the infinite, right? As it goes through serial time or a sequential time. Um, so what he's saying is that even though I guess what he's trying to say, if I were to rephrase it, is that it appears that thought is inconclusive, but because it is, in Iqbal's mind, it is contained with already, the infinite is always present within the finite. I mean, that's no, I gotta say the other way around. Because the finite is always within the infinite, um, the thought, thought can reach conclusiveness because, um, it is the infinite is always present. Uh, and that's why he uses the seed and tree example. But I really like. I think this is what what I really like about Iqbal is that he talks about like the movement of knowledge, um, and I like how he explains that the succession of finite concepts appearing to reach unity, which is already present within them. Um, and it's. I also feel like I feel as if like Hegel is very similar in some sense to this, but if I were to like look at it in a different way, but I don't know. Anyways, I thought of just sharing that, because I think it's interesting the way Iqbal tackles the problem that Kant proposes, and then the problem that Ibn Ghazali proposes, and how basically Iqbal is saying like, um, you guys are both missing something. um, but yeah, so I don't know. It's something that I still like, and there's something that Iqbal talks about. Um, it kind of reminds me of Hegel a little bit, where Iqbal actually asserts something called the absolute ego. Uh, but it's very important to what I always keep in mind when I read Iqbal is that sometimes it's hard to we have to really think about what Iqbal is saying, but then at the same time, uh, I always get the feeling that obviously he's very biased because he is Muslim and he is trying to already assert some kind of religious experience. However, I'm always like this, like pasta. Okay. Anyways, uh, but yeah, Iqbal but the thing, but as much as I think that's a fair critique, I guess. You could say like, oh, Iqbal's, kind of biased because uh, he's a Muslim and he's trying to assert a field for religious experience. But I think actually when we look at his arguments and his kind of just reasoning, I feel like there is definitely room to push those biases aside and really think about what Iqbal is saying. And I think that's I think that is how to best look at it. Um, and I also really like how he defines religion and how he defines a lot of concepts and just to share kind of because I also think this is the first book that I've encountered where someone tries to tackle mystic experience philosophically in a very honest way by using William James' variety of religious experience, and he uses other people like Whitehead. And so this man he isn't, like I said, he isn't unfamiliar with these thinkers. He encountered these thinkers. He thought stuff through. I mean, he read Bergson, he read Nietzsche. It's this man isn't somebody that just engaged with his own theological field of philosophy, right? But just to share with you, there's a part where he actually says religion is the expression of the whole of man. Um, and here's the part that kind of reminds me of a little bit of phenomenology of spirit, where he talks about that the aim of religion is to transform outer and inner of man. Um, so I guess if I were to like take Kojet's interpretation of Hegel, it's like where um, we are transforming. It's the slave that can change, right? It's the slave that already has the abstract ideal of freedom, and then he has to realize it in his actual physical state. Um, it's not enough just to have the ideal of freedom in your mind because you're still a slave. So I really like. I feel like there is comparisons that you can make, but you know, I feel like obviously for some people this would be a stretch, but who knows? I don't know. I like thinking about it. Um, anyways, that's all I really want to share with you guys, and that's it. All right, take care.